Book 5. Province. Somewhere deep in our part of the known universe, visible to all beings, a small machine with alien markings silently crossed into the middle of a circle of 10 inhabited planets, each circling around their own solar systems. Its arrival brought with it the apparent end of civilization, but because none of the planets were on the lookout for it, this momentous event in the history of everything passed by unnoticed to all but those on board. A hive of 10 Agrosians, their royal leader, and disgraced Prime Minister, Doris Johnson. Inside, Queen Calixta turned on her intergalactic air conditioning to full. Though a light breeze to an Agrosian, to a human the icy blast was near fatal. Unperturbed by the squirming going on beneath her, Queen Calixta leaned over her quarry and asked Doris.
Tell me more about these aliens we are going to visit. Do they all live on the same planet? Is that where we're headed based on the coordinates you gave me? Do they just rule the one planet, or is there a colony? How many different types of alien are there? What are their weaknesses? What are their military capabilities? How high up are you in this peace organisation you spoke of? Speak!
Her teeth chattering, Doris babbled as if her life depended on it, which she supposed it did, rather. Yes, these 12 or so aliens lived on this planet, but most of their kind each lived on their own world, with only a handful of travellers living out their lives on different orbs. Yes, she'd written out the coordinates as best she could remember them, but Decreeta was a new world, still undergoing terraforming, and she had never actually been there. Yes, all the rulers were on this one planet. If Calixta wiped them all out, then there would only be the lowly planet rulers like her dotted about the universe, and she had coordinates for those planets too. There were 10 main types of alien, but thanks to crossbreeding there were now probably more like 100 made up of different combinations scattered all over our half of the universe. No, very few planets have military capabilities nowadays, as there was no need for them, although a few planets still had obsolete weaponry lying around in museums, and the Earth continued to have its own army, who were mostly left with nothing to do. As for weaknesses, all she could say was that on Earth everyone kowtowed to their leaders and gave them all their power. That surely would be the same the universe over. The Queen grinned at that one.
Species are made of tougher stuff on our side of the galaxy,
she said.
I reckon we'll have this end of the universe conquered and be back in home for our night meal. That's amazing,
said Gosh.
I can't wait, I'm getting hungry already,
said Nosh.
Shall we give her another roughing up, just to make sure?
asked Kosh.
Be careful, O Queen. I'm not all that convinced by what our captive
said Tosh. Queen Calixta puzzled this over and returned to her victim, dangling her by the legs and shaking her up and down until all her fine jewellery came off.
You wouldn't have made any of this up to spare your own life, would you? Puny human.
Doris shook her head no, as well as she could in this awkward position, and inwardly thanked the lucky stars which she had now had so much practice at lying that this managed to come off as seeming natural.
Universal entry, pause, AB544936492002. Mars Universal Systems key code, acting President Eleron. Headline, Mission to Earth 5, retrieved from the Universal Records Office.
Desperate to get after Queen Calixta as quickly as possible and find out what might or might not have been going on, I grabbed the megaphone I spotted being held by a government protester outside Downing Street and clambered onto the nearest high patch of ground I could find, which turned out to be a cenotaph commemorating something called World Wars I, II and III. An ironic place, I noted, for a peace president to stand, or former peace president anyway, as I sadly thought to myself, remembering with a sudden jolt everything that had just happened on Decreeta. No time for moping now, though. If these aggressive aliens really were off to conquer my new adopted home and everyone on it, then that had left the IPO in the hands of me, and me alone. Best to worry about whether I was capable of stopping them later, and get on with the job in wing. Yelling through the megaphone, which I understood well after years of being babysat by Auntie C, I yelled to the still confused huddled throngs of humans. People of Earth, I hear that your leader Doris Johnson has been taken by unknown aliens. Is this right? A few faces looked my way and nodded, so I carried on. I am Eleron, the former president of the International Peace Organisation, from Decreeta via my home world of Mars. We have just heard about these new aliens on the block, and I was travelling to meet with your leader to see what we could do about it. Now I see that I was too late, and need your help. The crowd weren't too forthcoming.
We aren't in the IPO, stupid,
yelled one voice.
Go back home, to Loserville. How do we know you're not the one here to invade us? I've seen the film Mars Attacks. Twice.
I cursed under my breath. I knew it was going to be hard, but not this hard. As much as I always claimed to love humanity and half of my heritage, I already knew from my mother's tales of a time growing up on Earth that there were going to be individual humans I didn't like. At all.
Well, none of you will help me. I might be your only hope.
I asked one last time, desperately.
Scram, Martian.
But I'm not a Martian. I'm a Mrasianart. Completely different solar system altogether.
I started before being interrupted.
We don't want any little green men here.
But I'm not green. Compared to you, I'm not really that little. I mean, you could see that for yourselves.
There ain't no alien that's going to overpower us. Earth is the greatest. I mean, it was written on the side of a bus, so it must be true. Yee-haw!
But we've carried off your leader.
Yee-haw!
You're about to be invaded.
I said yee-haw!
Maybe enslaved or destroyed.
The yee-haws have spoken! Let's make this planet great again!
With that, the crowd started dancing automatically, as if this was a common cue, even though none of them seemed to know what they were dancing for. Frustrated, I went to walk away, chucking the megaphone as I went, intending to take myself off to my mother's old haunt in a city named Carlisle that I had always wanted to visit and think things over. On my way, the humans all laughed and jeered, yelling at me and calling me names and trying to push me. One even threw an infant chicken-based life form at my head, which didn't do much good, for me or the chicken. Another even took my navigation gadget and stamped on it. Oh, this was horrible. I didn't feel as unsafe as I would have done on Mars, though, oddly, nor even as unsafe as I felt on Decreeta. For but they only knew it, we were all of us on the same side. All these figures looked run down and impoverished, and were clearly venting built-up tensions that had been waiting to explode for an awfully long time. I understood their need to explode, but what were they exploding at me, misdirected from those who were really harming them? What harm had I ever done them? I didn't understand it at all. These were the very people I was trying to save, that I was trying to work so hard for, so that the riches of the universe could reach even this backwater planet. Why weren't these earthlings cross at the leaders who had left them like this, desperate and vulnerable, or those I had passed in golden rockets who clearly had money to waste, but still weren't prepared to spend it on their own kind? It made no sense to me. On Mars everyone helped everyone, well, most of the time at least, and nobody got left behind, even if hard work sometimes puts you ahead. Here, though, it felt as if communities had been set onto each other and outsiders, for no good reason other than to keep them from toppling the powerful and wealthy in charge, who could have solved their pain in an instant if they cared enough. These rulers were greedy and selfish, hoarding the planet's multiple resources for their own ends, and that in turn had made the people beneath them selfish, jealous and greedy, even though they had no resources of their own to hoard, and were jealous of other species for having the rights they had just voted to dismantle. Having fled from the crowd round the corner, I turned to the Universal, which was working again, desperate to hear a friendly voice. Any voice? Even Bob's would be good right now, I thought, rather to my surprise. To my horror, though, the Universal kept coming up blank, with everyone I tried to contact on Decreeta one by one, my inbuilt set crackling into silence. Even the direct phone lines weren't getting through. I couldn't tell if I was blocked as a side effect of having my Universal broadcast turned off, or everyone was too preoccupied to answer, or whether, a thought I didn't dare contemplate, everyone was dead. Well, that was it then. Despite my great dream of uniting the 10 planets, somehow I had ended up more alone than I had ever been before, lost on an alien planet where the very people I was trying to help didn't seem to want to listen to me. It felt hopeless, as if the universe was trapped in a vicious cycle of the bad guys winning and pushing each planet further to the right, so much so it was toppling over and crushing those of us on the left. Things had gotten out of control fast, and between wars over here and pandemics over there, and people on the take everywhere, and corruption and fiddling and fake news and politicians with agendas, we'd become hopelessly lost. I'd had such faith and optimism when I won the election that I could at least pave the way to get us back on the correct path. But now I realised that I was just another lone voice screaming into the ether, up against closed minds who either didn't notice how messed up everything was, or didn't care. And tyrants and dictators and phonies and crooks always looked after their own. But who did we have? Only me, and I had never felt so far out of my depth as I had right now. I stumbled my way back to where I thought I parked the shuttle, but to my horror, without my portable computer, I was lost. helpless and alone. Finding myself trapped down a dark alley, something else caught my eye too. A discarded magazine cover with my name on it.
It's the Alpha Centauri what won it, the newspaper full of Brexit news that's fit to print. Only £800. Inside, Eleron, Humrasianart Humbug, the new IPO president. President Eleron, naive or stupid, our intergalactic correspondent, Cora Loonsberg writes.
Eleron, aren't you just sick of him? This dozy little round-faced nincompoop has only been in power for a few days. I'm already so sick of his do-gooding attitude. With the universe, he couldn't even run a marathon on those little legs. I mean, how are we supposed to take someone that small and puny that seriously? Also, he may be half human, but what has he ever done for the Earth, his home and his mother's side? Nothing, just a do-goodery talk about helping people. Well, it hasn't trickled down to us yet. We're all still poor here on Earth, with the exception of our much-loved millionaires who have done so much for us, inventing golden rockets that warm us with their golden glow every night. Let's not forget, too, that Eleron's mother was a refugee, asking for handouts from the state, even if it wasn't our state for a change. Well, I say good riddance. His ideas are impractical, imbecilic, and impertinent. We don't want him. The Earth is better off out of the IPO. We could all look after our own. Brexit means Brexit. Look after the singles market, even in a busy universe.
Well, so that was why my speech had fallen on deaf ears. No wonder this planet hated me. I would hate me too if I'd had to live on the same street as this fictional Eleron. This awful being that was going to take everything away from everyone was only in politics to help himself. Only I wasn't. I was here to help save humanity. I wanted to save humanity. It was just some of the humans that I couldn't stand right now. Well, that was it then. I was clearly a failure. Reading that article just settled it. How did I ever think I had what it took to run for president when I was so small, so inexperienced, so young, so hopeless at everything? All my faults and failures, along with many more made-up lies, were all listed in this rag, and people here plainly thought so little of me that they believed every word of it. Crying bitterly and feeling very unpresidential, I cursed this wretched planet, this wretched job, those wretched invading aliens who had turned my life upside down, and most of all wretched me for ever thinking that my foolish idealistic visions would ever carry weight in the real world. Everything that I read in Endurance about the Earth being prejudiced against aliens was obviously true, and very little had changed in the 150 years since it had been written, even against a half-alien like me. Suddenly I was no longer proud to be half-human. I hated that side of myself, the part that was scared and frail and useless, that only looked out for itself like a Belobrat, that ran away at the first sign of danger like a Glabdahardit, that indulged too much like a Dewsbury giant, that was as lazy as a Habridat, that lost itself in gobbledygook escapism like a Camalosian. What did Brexit even mean? That was gruff and insensitive like a Magrumph, that was cold and hard as a Mechion, that was as impractical as a Mrasianbrat, as secretly lost and lonely as a Clandesprod. Only a human, that half of me included, was worse than all those beings, because he was all of those things put together, and that made him weak and close-minded, prejudiced against anyone who wasn't like me, and told myself lies about being better than that, to get me through the night. In a sudden realisation, it came to me that maybe these earthlings were right, and that I had been lying to myself too all this time. The universe would never change its ways. We were all doomed to failure, locked into a permanent state of exhaustive competition that only a few lucky ones in power could ever win. But this was the way the universe had always been, and this was surely the way the universe would always be. I'd meddled in things much bigger than I was. I got it all wrong. Feeling sorry for my sins, I shunned my human side and instead turned to my spiritual Mrasian half, pleading with the universe that, now I knew the truth, they should send someone wiser and more fitting to solve the problems I couldn't. The universe was better off without me. The universe probably wouldn't have long left with or without me anyway. I wondered if it would hurt much when these aliens got rid of me. I shut my eyes and tried to pretend the end of the universe was happening, pleading to those who had come before me and who I knew continued to live in the spirit realm and monitor from there. "Do it," I said, partly to them and partly to myself. "Do it now. If I have failed you, then let us all die now before I go through any further pain. Either that or save us all and send someone in my place. Or at the very least send me someone who will actually help me for a change." I opened one eye. There was no one there. Eglo was so incensed at watching her husband run off without her, but she made out that she was crying bitter tears at such wretched treatment. When no one ran up to see how she was, and she figured that somebody might notice that neither Mrasianarts or Belobrats have tear ducts, she decided to do something else instead. If Eleron could be uncharacteristically proactive by walking off like that on some hopeless mission when she had tried so hard to persuade him to stay, then, well, she could do something proactive too. That was what the Belobrats were good at, after all. She rang up for another tiara and charged it to Eleron's credit card. That will get him, she thought. She ordered a few extra bits of decor too to be on the safe side, and a new chintzy mirror that would help make her look even more glamorous. She took lots of pictures of herself pouting and uploaded them to her social media. And after a second thought, to all her anti-social media too. She gave herself a makeover with a specially imported luxurious tanning kit to make herself look as sun-kissed as a Clandesprod under the Three Sons of Ziggurat Free, despite the fact that she didn't have the complexion for it and ended up looking as if she'd just taken a dip in the food-replicated gravy instead. What else could she do? Well, there was still the small matter of that third interview she wanted to give. A huge exposé this time that would get her own back on everything that had gone on lately. A no-good husband, this dratted world, and those awful people she had to work with who still weren't fussing round her the way she expected. Ringing up the Earth's Intergalactic Publicity Department, she passed on her name and said she has an exposé of her husband and Decreeta which she would offer to the highest bidder. After all, she rationalised to herself, she had been bitterly betrayed and had no income anymore, so something had to keep her in dresses, tiaras and mirrors. Eglo's anger building as she was forced to wait. By the time the reporter from the newly merged British paper, The Weekly Fail, returned her call, she was frothing at the mouth to pass on the news.
It's about my husband,
she told the reporter.
He's an utterly hopeless spouse and an amateur being, never mind the worst president we've ever had. He's off now somewhere on a fool's errand. I don't know where. I wasn't really paying much attention, because he just walked out on me, for good. Yes, just like that. He even tried to take me with him after telling me how dangerous it would be. The nerve! Oh, yes, I would fling his belongings out the room, but what with the higher gravity on Decreeta, I've been told he'd only bounce back in again. Yes, I'd be glad to post for pictures, although, Sniffle, I'm sure you'll understand if I don't spell quite as widely as I usually do. You will get my good side, won't you? I look particularly stunning if you photograph me from the left. His mission? Oh, something to do with an alien invasion, I think. Might have been on Earth, actually. You haven't heard anything? No, I'm not surprised. It's all just an excuse to get away from me, I say. Wait, something's just flown past our window with alien markings. No, none of the IPO. Alien aliens. What the Decreeta's that?
Still clutching the phone, a frightened Eglo went to hide in the nearest place she could find, away from the prying eyes of a huge shuttle that had just parked itself and was so big it was almost level with the window. The Agrosian shuttle landed on Decreeta with such violence the tiny planet rocked back and forth, while great billows of sand were blasted against the headquarters. Inside there was pandemonium as the Glabdahardits squeaked loudly and ran for the nearest table, knocking over all the others in their haste to get there, while Eglo hid herself in a wardrobe. Horace and Bob found themselves looking at each other. They both said, all whilst trying to push each other in front of the door. In no time at all, it was smashed down by Queen Calixta, who, even though the door was built for the size of a Dewsbury giant, found herself stooping to get through, followed by half of her hive.
Hands up,
said Queen Calixta, walking into the room. She looked round, then briefly goggled and checked herself.
Plus wings, paws, hooves, flippers, whatever else you've got.
Well, all of them?
Asked Bob, putting all three arms in the air.
I feel silly.
Slash,
yelled an Agrosian running in to do battle.
Bosh,
Yelled another running alongside him.
Squash,
Yelled a third, much bigger than the others.
Give in or we bash you, added
Bosh.
Make you slaves, said
Kosh.
Plunder your goods,
Said Mosh.
Give us now.
Oh,
Said Horace.
I don't know what species you're from, but you're all so red and fluffy and cute. Let's be friends.
Not likely,
Said Gosh.
We are mortal enemies. Weird feathered space alien. We kill you all.
Gosh, you talk funny, you so-and-so.
Said Muldofus.
No, I is gosh,
Said Nagro, coming up from behind.
and I talk same is.
Queen Calixta was briefly puzzled by the range in size, scope and build of the assorted creatures before her, so different to her half of the universe. but regained her composure enough to ask.
Which of you is the Intergalactic President?
Horace won the pushing wars and thrust a quaking Bob in front of him one last time.
You?
Asked the Queen, leering down at the shaking Belobrat.
No, absolutely not. Oh, dear new leader, I'm not important in the slightest. I have no say around here at all. I'm just a tea boy.
Tea?
Queried Queen Calixta.
A soothing herbal drink,
Explained Bob.
half the universe drinks it, or at least half of our half of the universe does. It has a very soothing and restorative calming effect.
Queen Calixta grinned.
Then that would explain why you're the weediest bunch of aliens I've ever seen. You then, you're the leader.
She inquired to Horace, who was the calmest person in the room by far.
Not technically, ma'am, no.
Bob continued.
Our president is a Humrasianart known as Eleron. He's the one really in charge of things, but he's not here right now. This Habrat here is second in command. I just make the sandwiches.
With this, Bob pushed the protesting Horace back in front of him.
Sandwiches? You actually eat the sand on your planet? No, don't tell me I don't care. That's a shame,
said Queen Calixta.
Why?
Asked Bob, while Horace stared calmly on.
I don't know how you do things with your side of the universe, but you should know that a ruler can only be exceeded by a fellow ruler. A second in command just won't do, especially one so scrawny. Where is your president? Bring him to me now.
Horace stamped on Bob's tail to stop him talking.
He's on an errand on some distant planet. We're not sure where or when he'll be back.
Very well.
Said Queen Calixta, making herself at home in the Decretian main hall.
We will wait for this Eleron of yours to return. Will you tell me everything about your planetary system and all the resources that each of your planets have? Oh, and hand over this Chuck Berry, please. He said you might be the only thing that keeps you alive right now.
The IPO looked around at one another, confused. Only Horace knew who Chuck Berry was, and he was desperately trying to remember what Eleron had told him.
He's busy,
Horace replied.
writing a new song called Roll Over Belobrat. He can't be disturbed yet, but I'll see what I can do. Only we could reach him, so you'll have to keep us alive.
That's lucky for you,
Demurred Queen Calixta.
for it might be the only thing keeping you alive right now. We want him alive to write our new anthem for us. Don't fob us off with one of those inferior writers either. Everything else on the disc we were said was truly awful. We should all be compensated for having to subject our sensitive alien ears to it. Yes, give us your money now,
Said Dosh.
or we'll bash you.
Yelled Kosh again.
We'll squash you.
Added Squash for good measure.
You mean you didn't meet Eleron on Earth before you left?
Gasped Bob, instantly regretting it as Horace groaned. Queen Calixta turned to him.
Aha, so he's on Earth. Back where we have just been. I shall send my patrols out to recover him. No, better still, you will get in contact with him and tell him to return immediately.
I can't,
Said Bob.
madam.
He concluded, because he thought he'd better.
Why?
Said the Queen, leaning in and looking threatening.
But because we're not in contact with him.
No,
Said Queen Calixta threateningly.
I'm a ruler, and I know how these things work, and that just won't wash. Here, your highness.
Said an Agrosian named Wash, who was impatiently shooed away.
Because he's raising a military army.
Said Bob. Queen Calixta looked at the Belobrat suspiciously, eyeing all three heads up and down in turn.
I know when an alien is lying to escape attack. That's just a load of... Gosh! Reporting for duty, mistress!
Said another Agrosian walking in late.
That's not it. Eleron's on official secret business. So secret none of us know where he is.
Sputtered in Horace, thinking quickly.
And you have no way of monitoring his actions?
Mused the Queen as she walked around the room, stopping by the table where a pair of glabder-hearted legs were poking out from underneath.
You!
Calixta yelled at the top of her voice as Jane squeaked loudly.
You won't get anything sensible out of her. Leave her alone. The foot's hard.
Said Bob in a panic.
That tells you everything you need to know about anyone.
Horace looked at him with disgust.
Only it's a few days out of date.
Said Horace quickly.
So that we can keep official secrets to ourselves. I'm sure you must understand what being in charge of others is like, madam, and how much secrecy there needs to be in government. A ruler as brilliant as yourself.
not really.
Queen Calixta mused.
Mostly government is me telling people to do things and then watching them doing them.
Well, exterminating any of the ones who do it badly. No secrecy about it.
But I understand that primitive life forms might not have worked that out for themselves yet. How many revolutions round your sun is a few days?
Horace happened to be sat next to Odebeggar, who pushed the nervous Mrasianart out front.
I'm a designated researcher here, madam, and on this planet a few days happens to be a few times around the sun. Say 5?
Mused Queen Calixta.
A fair time. But after all, victory will be forever. This time can also be well spent interrogating my prisoners. Bring in the Earthling.
Doris, who so recently had been revelling in her status as the Earth President, found herself unceremoniously dumped on the floor at the feet of a horrified IPO cabinet. So these weren't just idle threats then, they thought to themselves. Then suddenly the phone rang. Not sure what it was, Queen Calixta nodded at her hive, who fell over themselves, quite literally, trying to be the first one to destroy it, the phone disappearing in a puff of Agrosian smoke. Any thought left in the IPO's heads that they might yet be able to defeat these aliens and call for outside help evaporated with it. Those who were left on Decreeta looked at each other with worry, ignoring the snivelling Doris at their feet. This was serious indeed, perhaps the biggest threat the universe had ever faced.
Universal entry paused. AB54493649207. Mars Universal Systems Key Code. Acting President Eleron. Headline: Mission to Earth 6. Retrieved from the Universal Records Office.
To my great surprise, I didn't die after closing my eyes. Instead, someone rushed towards me at lightning speed and gathered me by the wing, walking me away quicker than I could naturally go, before really giving me time to think. I shrank away. Was I about to be taunted again? Or worse? "Eleron, shush," she whispered. "It's the First Lady with you. Don't draw attention to yourself. Which way is your shuttle? We'll walk there now, quickly, and talk as we go." "You know me," I said, suddenly as proud as a Belobrat, and instantly regretting feeling like that when there were so many bigger issues at stake, or desperately trying to remember the direction I'd come from. "Yes, of course I do. I voted for you. Where is your shuttle?" I don't know," I gulped. "Those alien earthlings, they destroyed my computer with my navigation on it. I'm lost." "I saw something flash up on the news a few minutes ago about the destruction of Trafalgar Square. Was that anything to do with you?" hissed this newcomer. Maybe. It didn't seem very square," I confessed, "and it was a long way away from Trafalgar on the Earth map." "Come with me," said the Earthling, taking me by the hand. "I think I know where you're parked. I'm Geraldine, by the way." "Oh," I said, "I'm Ella." "Yes, I know," this figure jokingly frowned at me as we walked. "I oversaw the counting of your votes, well, your earthly votes anyway, debated whether or not to cheat to make you win, but decided that wouldn't have been very Eleron-like, and in the end I didn't have to anyway. You won the intergalactic elections on Earth by a landslide. I think I've probably heard everything you've ever said. In public, I mean. I'm not that much of a stalker, but I do enjoy your universal feed. That speech of yours last year about how the universe is only as strong as its weakest creature, that was my favourite, I think. Or maybe it was that one from a few months ago, about the ripple effect of our actions on other creatures on other planets, and how we should think of ourselves as one big community, where what each of us does affects all of us. I love that. Or your speech commemorating 1,000 years since the last intergalactic war, but how peace continues to be something we have to work at, rather than fall into. I was thinking about that one for a long time, I can tell you. Sorry, I'm fan-humaning." "You're a fan?" I asked, puzzled. "Here on Earth?" "More than that, I'm your biggest fan," she grinned at me. "Well, one of several big fans, if I'm honest, but I bet I could match them all in a pub quiz with questions about you. Everyone else who stands for office always seems like a politician, but you seem more human somehow, even though you're half Mrasianart." "Really?" I said. "But I thought I didn't get many actual votes. But I was all set up." Geraldine looked puzzled. "Hardly. You won, didn't you? And I know loads of people who voted for you. Most of us, in fact. You're an inspiration. After all, you're the reason I do what I do. I work in government. Well, sort of. I mean, I'm just a secretary, really, someone who does a lot of counting for a living, even though what I do doesn't count for an awful lot, really, in the grand scheme of things. I might be useful to you, though. I handle all the diaries, know all the governmental codes, and I've been there for every last tantrum thrown by this cabinet, which is a lot, I can tell you. I was there when the aliens took Doris away, too. But I don't understand, I said, confused. I thought they hated the Intergalactic Peace Organisation on Earth. You all left us. Oh, no. I mean, yes, we did leave, of course, but not everybody wants to leave, just the politicians who stand to make some extra money out of it. Some of us are still quite sensible, really. We're just outnumbered by the rest of them. After all, a good quarter of the Earth's population of Doris's great-great-great-great-grandfather Boris's genes anyway. My goodness, that man had a lot of children. I was confused. But didn't you just say you were a politician? I thought you'd all refused to work with me. Geraldine shook her head. No, well, yes, officially, but I was going to sabotage everything from the inside if I got a chance. Look, let me explain. I entered politics because of you. You inspired me so much more than all the Earth politicians talking about closed borders and looking after our own and planet nationalism with your universalism brand of politics. But I wasn't eligible to run for any other planet, so I ended up running for this one instead anyway, even though I knew I'd lose. I did it to get a bit of experience in case I could ever afford to move to another planet one day. It's not just me either. A lot of my colleagues felt the same. On Earth you're a hero to those who really matter, the people. It's only our politicians who haven't caught on to your way of life and sabotaged you in the media because they were afraid you'd take away their cushy lifestyles. It's all a bit too far thinking for them when they only care about surviving till next election and don't want to upset things too much in case they lose what they've got. But most actual people absolutely see what you're trying to do by thinking in universal terms and helping each of us by helping all of us. Yeah, I know. I thought we'd be further ahead than this by the 21st century too. But here we are. We didn't get those hover boots or flying cities in the sky yet either. And now here you are to save us. Of all the people in the universe I could have bumped into today, you're the one I wanted to see most of all. Why? I asked, confused. I'm on my own, I'm afraid, not with the IPO. Because if you're here and not on Decreeta being conquered, and that means there is some slim chance for us to survive. If I had to put faith in anyone to save us all, it would be you, not Doris and her ilk. They'd sell us out for a Habridat Canute. At the risk of repeating myself, why? I asked, even more confused. I was studying the aliens when they invaded us and talked to Doris. You were there? I asked, astonished. Yes, dear, don't interrupt. There's a good Humrasianart. I was studying them and picked up on a very important point, that according to their rules, their queen has to surrender to you, and they can't do that if they can't find you. I'm not sure why. It must be some alien code of conduct or something. Anyway, if you're not there to hand over to, then the universe is safe. I mused this over. I won't do much good for very long, I'm afraid. Long story, but I'm not going to be president for much longer. You mean you've organised a war cabinet already, with alternating leaders? Brilliant. Teamwork. Very Eleron. To my surprise, Geraldine seemed to take all this in a stride, more like a Habridat than what I'd heard of humans. No time to talk about that now, though. The ruler said that she'd be coming back this way soon, so we have to get you off this planet first. And once we have you safely away, you can put your plan of action into being. I take it you have a plan, President Eleron? I start off looking helpless. But you seem the sort to always have a plan. I've heard all your speeches. They brought me hope, much more so than the imbecile we have in charge here. If anyone can bring us peace, I know it's you. With this I burst into tears. But I'm a fraud, I cry. I can't even keep the peace of my own marriage or my adopted planet. The IPO said they were only using me as a figurehead, and they were doing the real work behind my back. And I couldn't get them to come with me, and now they're all in danger, including Airglow, and... Geraldine stopped at this and looked at me sadly. Then you weren't coming to save her, she asked quietly. The great Eleron, our peace candidate, was just running away, like a glad to heart it. Well, no, I suppose I was running towards you to help, I replied, wiping my tears away, embarrassed, though I didn't know what I could do, and I still don't if I'm honest, I ended feebly. Geraldine shrugged and started walking again, pulling me with her. That's good enough for me, she said. At least you were trying to save us. That's more than the rest of them at the IPO were doing by the sounds of things. I could see why they get such a bad name on this planet sometimes. We still remember the days of the high taxes to the Belobrats. That's the sign of a true leader, that is, being a lone voice, listening to what they had to say, and doing her own thing anyway. That's very Eleron too, that is.
It is?
Absolutely. It would have broken my heart if you turned out to be a self-interested coward like the rest of them after all those wonderful speeches you gave us. But you did the right thing when it mattered. And what more can you ask of a politician than that?
Even if I turn out to be hugely incompetent?
Geraldine laughed. Oh, we're used to incompetent world leaders on Earth, believe you me. It's the ones who refuse to admit they're out of their depth, who just pretend to care while helping themselves to everything they can find. They're the ones to get angry about. Mistakes are only human, and that goes double for Humrasianart. I felt strangely better, comforted by this stranger's words, but I couldn't resist asking again. Are you sure you know who I am? Geraldine laughed again, less cynically this time. Oh, yes, you have no idea. I never missed a speech. You must have made dozens. They brought me such comfort growing up in the slums of Skelmsdale, just thinking that someone else thought the same as me, that war might gain you a few extra inches for your empire, some temporary riches to spend, but being kind and peaceful in our day-to-day lives helps everyone to prosper in the end. It was the best day of my life when you won the IPO election. It really gave me hope. That's why I was so grateful to see you, because I know you're our hero, precisely because you're honest enough to believe when you said you wouldn't help us, not hurt us. Geraldine broke off suddenly. Wait, she really did park there? I looked where she was pointing, and sheepishly recognised the marble lions now lying on the ground cracked, like giant dominoes. And there, she pointed in the distance, where Nelson's column is lying on its side and being attacked by pigeons. Is that something to do with you too? Yes, I said, embarrassed yet again. I suppose so. I was in a hurry, you see, and couldn't find where to park. Why, was it somewhere important? Important, said Geraldine, raising her eyebrows in that discombobulating way humans seem to have. Why, it was... She shrugged her shoulders in a very Habredat way and laughed again. Well, I suppose not, at least given the context of today, anyway. In you get, Eleron. Let's get you away from here, quick.
Universal entry paused. AB54493649170. Raj Universal Systems key code. Acting President Eleron. Headline: Mission to Earth 7. Retrieved from the Universal Records Office.
What's this? Said Geraldine, reaching onto the passenger seat. A foosball, I think. It was left over from the Habredat sports team or something. Oh, said Geraldine, confused but aware that there were bigger matters to have a conversation about. What a difference this urgency made from working with flipping Habredat. Quick, let's get out of here, fast. No, I said, stopping her. Urgency is what got us into this mess, the humans trying to make interstellar contact before they were ready. We're not going to help anybody by blundering in without a plan. They can outreact to us with anything we do, but if we're smart and take our time, we can outthink them. And that extra time might just help us surprise them as well. Patience is the Mrasianart way, however much my human side wants me to panic right now. Geraldine didn't look too sure, but she demurred for now. We ought to at least get moving from Earth, though. They might come back. Wait, I said. Something's just occurred to me. Before we get in and fly away, I have to check. Reaching for the gadget in my wing, I went to check the local time, then checked it again to make sure it hadn't converted to Earth time or something odd. Just to make sure, I asked Geraldine to check the local time on the continent for me, which turned out to be something very different again. How very muddling. How very human. I know time is of the essence, but does it really matter so much what the time is now, Eleron? She asked impatiently. It's escaping time right now, that's all you need to know. It's just occurred to me, I said. I have a device inside me called Futsard that records everything I'm doing except at certain times of the day and relays it through the Universal, though only after a few days' delay at this present moment. You might have one too. Well, they rejected having them on Earth, but I have heard about those gadgets and have access to something similar. I know they allow you to go about your daily business or keeping an eye on everything a celebrity or important person says and does if you want to. I'm not quite sure why anyone would want to. I would imagine it would be quite useful for insomnia. So? My companion asked, confused. I just have this awful feeling that these aliens from the other side of the universe might use it to spy on us and see what we're up to. Even with a week's delay, it might give away where we are and where we go to. Depending how suddenly we can do something, I gabbled, my thoughts coming in a sudden blaze. Why a few days' delay? Geraldine asked. I don't know, to be honest. Something legal and boringly political about allowing us to negotiate treaties without the other side knowing everything we know, I presume. I never asked. Thankfully this thing thinks I'm having a bath and brushing my 2 teeth right now, so it's turned itself off. We'll have to be quick, though, and decide right now where we're going to go and what we're going to do so that we can hide our plan from these aliens. I'll try and give you a sign when it turns itself back on. Geraldine looked relieved. Good thinking. That would be awful if innocent beings got hurt because of us. We have to go somewhere, though. We don't have enough fuel to just drift through space. So what are we going to do? Rush in and save everybody? Or let them die and run away? Gosh, no, I said, slowly feeling more like myself again. Neither. Rushing in would get them killed, but I can't in all conscience just run away either. We need time to think, to escape just far enough away that they can't stop us, time enough to go where we might be able to get help from somebody. And just where do we get help in stopping a powerful alien from a part of the universe we know nothing about? I had forgotten what my mother had told me about the uniquely Earth trait of sarcasm, which I had inherited also. At least I wouldn't have to explain my choice of words here, I thought to myself. It had been hard work explaining the concept of sarcasm to Mechions and Camalosians in particular. Everywhere, at random, I replied. If we fly around the universe like crazy paving, we might outwit the aliens who do things in a particular order. Just afford. Where to hide first, though? It had to be somewhere near enough that the shuttle could get to it without refuelling, but not so close or so linked to me that it would be an obvious place for the Agrosians to go out looking for us. After much discussion, we finally settled on Ducius, as of all the 10 planets on our side of the galaxy, it was the one with the best communication between the planets. We had the extra benefit, too, that while our half of the universe knew that the Dewsbury giants were meek and mild and rather scared of their own shadows, their appearance was the most striking of all 10 of us, as even the smallest Dewsburys were 10 feet tall, and more in their native clogs. To my relief, the Lycad seemed to have programmed the shuttle with his customary Mechion thoroughness, and after locking in Dusius as our first destination, I hit the coordinate shuttle shuffle button, in the hopes that this would throw any of our trackers off the scent. I also had a plan slowly building in my mind about what might be done to save everyone, though I seriously doubted it would work. It was the best idea I had, and I desperately wanted to share it with Geraldine to get her feedback. No sooner had I told her that I had an idea, though, than the foot star sprang into life again, and I had to make a flapping motion with my wings to signal my companion to keep quiet. Being careful to angle myself away from our navigation controls, and the shuttle now well on its way, I tried desperately to contact the IPO again, to get anyone's voice on the phone to find out what was happening. But nobody spoke. My task abandoned, and our shuttle now fully up in the air, we finally collapsed in our seats and enjoyed the silence after my far too busy day, which was punctuated by something suddenly occurring to one or other of us. "What about supplies?" asked Geraldine in a fright. "It might be days before we get to where we're going. We should have picked something up, but I didn't stop to think." "No," I replied, "it's fine. This is a special shuttle that's really fast, so we'll be there before you know it. It's probably quicker than getting round one of your countries on Earth. I also brought enough food from Decreeta to last months if need be. Assume you like narwhal burgers?" Geraldine shrugged. "I've never tried them, but they sound better than starvation." "Oh, well," I replied, "if you don't, then our destination, I should say, is sure to provide us with some." A pause. "Wait," said Geraldine, "why aren't I feeling any G-forces?" I looked at her puzzled. "You know, the effects of gravity as we leave the Earth's atmosphere." "Oh," I said, "it's element 115, special fuel combined with a clever piece of Mechion technology that compensates with gravity released on the shuttle. There's less motion sickness than one of your Earth Galumphary buses, I believe. We don't call them G-forces on Mars. The Glabderhardits took offence to it." "Ah," said Geraldine. More silence. "Wait," I said, sitting bolt upright. "You didn't tell anyone where you were going. Your family won't know what's happened to you." "We don't want anyone to know, stupid, or they'll find you," Geraldine said, punching my arm. I quite often go without talking to anyone for days when there's a big crisis on in government. And I guess this would count as a super big crisis, so no one would be that worried. I can always send a cryptic message to them via the Universal if I need to tell them I'm still alive. I fear the phone bill might be astronomical, though. I told the Earth Council we should have had full Universal too in case of times like this. Silence. Wait, I continued. I know where there's a gun-running scheme to Helisphere. I could go to Decreeta and find out more information, and... Geraldine frowned. Eleron, I'm surprised at you. You're in the IPO. You stand for peace. And even if you do find those weapons, what good will they be against these aliens? I tell you, I saw them disintegrate a man without even blinking. Not that these creatures had any eyelids, come to think of it. There's nothing on our side of the universe that can do that. Even the Belobrat. You're right, I whisper. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking. I bet these aliens would love a prescription to War Monthly. What? Oh, nothing. More silence. Wait, said Geraldine. Are we supposed to, I don't know, pass on a virus to these aliens? The common cold, or the common COVID, or something, and watch them drop dead? I sighed. Only in books and films, I'm afraid. For the last few centuries there's been an invisible Mechion antivirus filter surrounding each planet, and everyone who visits passes through it. I don't know if there's any way of turning it off. If there is, I think it died with its maker. Plus it might kill millions of the people we're busy trying to save if they suddenly encountered germs again after all this time. Good job too, given what happened in the last intergalactic pandemic. The Belobrats refused to wear one mask, never mind 3, and the Clandesbros refused to self-isolate without their clan. Oh, sighed Geraldine. I guess our Earthwriters got that bit about germ warfare wrong then. Back to the drawing board we go. More silence. Maybe if we put all our weaponry together from each planet. My thoughts peter out into silence. Geraldine shuddered. Judging by the weaponry I saw them use, they would still be more deadly than our weapons en masse. And anyway, it's still not a good look for a peace organisation if we pull up asking for weapons. I said, I take your point. More silence. Wait, said Geraldine. If the whole universe really is at stake, maybe we should just hand the Earth over to spare the other 9 planets. You know, collateral damage. I mean, we did get everyone else into this mess, rather, and we're not in the IPO. The Earth isn't very important in astronomical terms, after all. It might be doing some of the poor at home a favour. Geraldine's voice dwindled away. I looked at her and patted her arm. You know you don't really mean that. Every life is important, no matter whose it is. If we think like that, then we just end up thinking like they do. But that isn't fair. It isn't right. It's not what I signed up to the IPO to do, and it's not what's going to happen. Either we all die, or we all live, or at least as many of us as possible. Geraldine smiled back, a little gratefully. Another long silence. Wait, I said, trying hard to use this time to think. Tell me everything you know about these aliens. Well, like what? Said my companion, puzzled. Did they seem the sort of people you could negotiate with, talk to? No, said Geraldine with a vicious shake of the head. Definitely not. They seem like the sort of people who would zap first and ask questions later, if you know what I mean. A bit like the 19th century British Empire, or the 20th century Americans. Good job their empire collapsed a century later too. What? Oh, nothing. You would think that on the outside that they are cute and short and fluffy, but no, I saw what they can do, and it isn't pleasant. Plus their ruler's 10 feet tall and scarier than 100 Doris Johnsons rolled into one. Geraldine shuddered. I added thinkingly, did these aliens seem particularly advanced? As if they'd had a bit of a head start over us, evolutionary speaking. Oh, totally. They're a good few thousand years ahead of even the Mechions, I'd say, judging by their shuttle and their weapons. Maybe more. I continued. This was not looking good. Did you happen to get a good look at them, and their ship? Yes, I saw both up close, Geraldine said, apparently unperturbed by her experience. The aliens were stocky, short and hairy, all except their leader, who was about 20 foot tall and wearing a crown. She had to break down the door at Downing Street to get in. Their ship was sort of cigar-shaped, not like the round saucer shape we're in now. Did it look organic? Vegetable, animal, or mineral? I asked. Geraldine laughed. Animal, clearly. We weren't talking trees or anything like that. Not robots? No, definitely not robots. You either spent too long hanging around Mechions, you've read too much science fiction. And their ship? Was it made out of natural materials or synthetic ones? Geraldine had to think about that one. It looked a bit metallic, just from the way our sun's rays were glinting off it, but at the same time wasn't any sort of material I've ever seen, and I used to have the Universal Shuttle Spotter's Guide to the 10 Planets on my bookshelf as a girl. I should know. I always dreamed of being a shuttle pilot visiting other worlds. I was quite disappointed when I found out my job with the government was so earthbound. I guess you're going to get your chance now, I replied. Yes, she said wistfully. Funny how life turns out. She looked thoughtful. I hit the side of my chair hard. There must be something we have on this side of the universe that's better than what they have on theirs. I just wish we knew more about them. It's the unknown part that's the problem. I sighed. Did we mention anything at all that might help us? Geraldine recounted everything that had happened in an impressive amount of detail. I seized upon a mention of having conquered everyone on their side of the universe long ago. That could be very useful, I said, lost in thought. So, unless we're dealing with exceptionally long-life beings, they won't actually have conquered anyone in their lifetimes. We'll be used to their citizens cowering in fear at them. Why do you ask? They must have a weakness. If they're that far ahead of us in that way, evolutionary, then either they're a long-lived race or they've neglected other means of evolving, like technology, or democracy, or learning, just... Wait, yes, that's it. Geraldine, I think I might have an actual honest-to-goodness plan properly now. Something we have that they don't have. Oh, but it relies on everyone pulling together to make it work, and I don't know if they will. This is such a fragmented universe. If only I'd had longer than a week to try to pull everyone together, we might have had a better chance. What? Asked Geraldine, and I almost told her, but I just managed to stop myself in time and instead tapped my sleeve with a futsal recording device was ticking underneath. I knew you would have a plan, said Geraldine simply. I have every confidence in you. As that was more than I had in myself just then, I let the conversation trail back into silence for a few minutes, before another thought struck me. Wait, I said, do we even know the name of the minister we're going to see? Geraldine smiled. Oh, that's easy. It's J. Photographic memory, me. And in a softer voice. That's not giving too much away, is it? The aliens won't know what a giveaway that name is. The fact that on this planet every name is made up of repeated letters, passed on down the family. No, I don't think so, I whispered, before smiling back and saying in a louder voice, Thank you, Geraldine, for everything. I'm so glad you're here. I'm just glad you're not there. I'm sorry about your friends. And your wife. My smile faded. Thank you. What will these aliens do to them, do you think? I'm not sure, but it looked as if they wanted to keep people alive. At least for now. Their queen seemed a bit trigger-happy, but as long as everyone does what they're told, they should be fine. And politicians tend to do that, I've noticed. I groaned. Not Airglow, though. Doing what she's told is the last thing she'll do. I just hope she's been sensible and kept out of the way somewhere. Geraldine patted my wing comfortingly. She'll be safest of all if he knows she's so strongly connected to you. My guess is they'll maybe grill her for hours to find out where you've gone, but as she doesn't actually know, she'll be fine. I'll keep her alive, just in case, though. I smiled wanly. I hope you're right. Oh, you'll soon learn that I invariably am. Geraldine smiled back. There was a pause while I worked at my courage to ask. You are all human, by the way, not part Belobrat or anything. Geraldine laughed again. Hardly. All human, me. You know what they say about humanity, though. We're like an assortment box of everything the rest of the universe has to offer. That's why the scientists say we've evolved so slowly, because we're made up of so many contradictions. You must know that, surely, with your human ancestry. I sighed. Sort of. Humanity is a species I kind of know least well, though. The only human I'd ever met before today was my mother. She was more like a Mrasianbrat than the locals, so it was hard to know what traits of being human and which were just her. More silence. It's my turn to sit upright this time. Are we really doing the best thing? You know, running away. It seems an odd way to save the universe. Geraldine turned round and for the first time looked me straight in the eyes. To save other people first, you must survive yourself. I grinned. You're right about humanity, I said. That sentence was positively Mrasianart of you. I really hope you're right, Geraldine. Can we really do this? You and me, alone in the universe? More silence. All my words hung in the air, and we just looked at each other. And silence had never seemed so ominous.
Universal entry pause AB 54493649211. Mraz Universal Systems Key Code. Acting President Eleron. Headline Mission to Induce. Retrieved from Universal Records of Visit.
We spent the rest of our journey in relatively comfortable silence, me thinking deeply with my wing palms pressed into my forehead, and Geraldine tinkering with my portable computer, which she proceeded to fix rather handily, despite being mechy on technology. You get into the habit of repairing second-hand alien stuff when you live on Earth, she said, needlessly apologetically given the circumstances. We don't tend to see anything new. Hey, is that our destination coming into view already? This is a shorter travelling time than getting to the next town back home. To think what we could do if the universe truly shared its technology out between everyone. Ducius was easy to find. The only known inhabited planet that was a gas giant rather than one with hard-to-find surfaces. It was big and blue and sticky, with the consistency of a marshmallow that hadn't quite set yet, a little like the Earth, but with storm clouds of lemonade crossing the surface every so often. The planet was dominated by giant lakes, which I discovered later were made out of beds of cereal, with a constant stream of milk and lemonade that ran through them. Already, while we were still quite a distance out in space, I could see the ginormous habitats of the Dewsbury giants looming into view, colossal buildings that reached up to the sky, that looked like giant marshmallows, but were in the shape of pies, carved out of some gooey alien-looking stone. In between every house and monument stood a giant kitchen, in the shape of a giant bagel, all of which seemed to be serving a different individual culinary delicacy, and each one with a long queue of locals leading from it. Slowly the shuttle got nearer and headed towards the designated landing area for intergalactic ships, next to a giant peace fountain erected during the Endurance and Insurgence years, that overlooked a mammoth quadrangle, also built out of this local sticky stone. To my delight, I spotted two of the figures on it as my human and Mrasianbrat parents, and instantly felt slightly better. I excitedly pointed this out to Geraldine, who shrugged simply. I know. They're on all planets, silly. Well, all except Earth. They took theirs down. And actually, I'm not sure if the Habradats ever actually finished building theirs. It was too much effort. It's just that I've never been to a different planet, I said. Well, other than Decreeta. Not one with a fountain before, anyway. That's amazing to think that all these billions of light years away from home, all these strangers know me and my family history. Of course, said Geraldine, turning to me with a smile on her face. You're the great Eleron, born from battle and bred for peace, whose parents nevertheless helped save the universe with the help of a peace orchestra. Or Mars, at any rate. And you're going to save us all now. Geraldine, I really don't think I am that great, I said. I think you may be under misconception. All the things that happened were events that affected my parents, not really me. I fear I'm a fraud. After all, I'm not technically president right now. I felt myself crying and brushed my tears away as if hiding what they were, as I always did in company, perhaps forgetting in my haste that it was my earthly side that allowed me to cry, and my companion knew exactly what was going on. Nonsense, she snorted. I've heard you talk. You're inspiring. All the other candidates just spoke about what they'd done on their planets, or about what they'd done in the past, or how much money they were going to make right now. Not you, though. You spoke of the future, through the eyes of a hybrid who'd seen what awful things prejudice and hatred could do, and with such a clear vision of what kindness and fairness might bring everyone. Even if only a fraction of what you believe comes true, that would still make the universe a much better place to live in. And even if that's impossible, better to hear someone at least trying to unite our broken universe than be on the take again. I don't think you quite realise the impact your words had on everyone, Eleron. They did, I asked. That's not what they said on Decreeta. They told me not to go. They said there was a figurehead, a patsy, Well, Geraldine said, staring at me intensely, they aren't people, are they? Just fellow politicians who didn't understand your vision and who weren't going to gain anything from it, so didn't support it. I do, though, along with everyone who ever voted for you. You're one of us. Even after you went there to join them, you remained one of us, which is rare. Plus, which of you was brave enough to try to come along and save us? It wasn't that lot sitting in their ivory towers, was it? It's a good job you were made president, or you'd be captured or dead, and we'd all be in even bigger trouble right now than we currently are. I sat for a while, thinking this over. What's the biggest difficulty with your plan? Asked Geraldine practically. Maybe we could start from there. If we can solve that, then maybe everything else will fall into place, without giving anything away to who may be listening. I pondered this for a while. I guess I thought that to make it work, I need cooperation from as many people as possible. I suppose if 1 or 2 planets don't want to take part, then it might still work. But if only 1 or 2, or even no one wants to help, then we're stuffed. After all, why should they? This is a danger they have to take on trust for now, that they can't see. This is such a new universe, or at least the idea that we aren't alone in it is still so new and fresh, just a century and a half into being absolutely certain of that. People still don't trust each other yet, and I'm not sure, given how few people trust or believe in me already, if I'm the right person to earn that trust. Especially given that it all hinges on saving a planet that's always been the most suspicious and least integrated into the universe as it stands. Well then, said Sherilyn, that's not something you can do much about. If the universe is sensible and understands that we are entering a new period of understanding and seeing things from a bigger vantage point, then it will save itself, whatever you do or don't do. If it doesn't see that, then I'm not sure it's a universe that deserves to survive anyway. Maybe that would make us no better than these invading aliens, with a self-centered view of the universe instead. Whatever happens, it's not all your problem, Eleron. You're not responsible for anyone's reactions except your own, and I think you're doing the right thing right now. There's nothing more you can be doing, honestly. People can't follow if you don't at least try and give them something to get behind, and you've done that all right. It's not up to you if they ultimately follow or not. Feeling more confident, I patted my companion on the back. Thank you, I said simply. For what? Sherilyn laughed. You're the great leader, and most of these words are yours anyway. I'm just the hanger-on repeating your speeches at you. No, I said, you're much more than that. Thank you for reminding me who I was. There was a bit of good confrontation on Decreeta. It almost made me forget myself. Do I admit to Sherilyn that I'd only become president by false pretences, I wondered, and that I wouldn't technically be president for more than a few days now? But no, look at that trusting, eager face. Sherilyn's support was about the only thing that was getting me through this ordeal, and she had arrived just when I'd asked the universe for help. I wasn't going to disappoint her now. Better to come clean later. Not just reminding you of who you were, said Sherilyn, but who you will be. Now bring that portable gadget with you, and let's see if we can find the right intergalactic embassy. The embassy turned out to be a comparatively small and innocuous building, a stone egg cup sandwiched between what looked like a milkshake parlour and a gigantic biscuit barrel. To my slight surprise, Viducius President JJJJ was only too eager to meet with us and ushered us into a gigantic banqueting table that was in the middle of the embassy hall and decked with more foodstuff than I'd ever seen in my life. After so many weeks coping with the wonky food replicators on Dusius, it was truly a sight for sore eyes and empty tummies. Our host JJJJ was a quiet and generous soul, but one with a certain steeliness hidden behind his good manners that made me alarmed to be bringing him bad news. I was even more alarmed by the fact that I couldn't properly tell him what the bad news was for another hour until the futsal switched itself off, and I could tell it was getting annoyed at the way I kept fidgeting and checking my watch every few minutes.
How is you?
Asked JJJJ while Sherilyn and I looked at each other, embarrassed.
I hope it's not his conduct that has brought you all the way out here.
No, indeed, I said. He's been a true credit to the IPO.
Oh, good,
said JJJJ, buttering some strange yeast-based concoction with what looked like blue paste.
He's a good lad, but between you and me, a few sandwiches short of a picnic. Very loyal, though, very hard-working, very brave. And if it's not about her, why are you here?
I said, looking at my watch. I'd rather not say, just yet. We munched in silence for a few minutes, but I could tell our host was growing both puzzled and bored, as well as anxious that we were merely moving most of our food round our plates.
President Eleron,
he said at last,
I understand you have important matters of state to attend to. We ourselves don't have many customs on our planet. However, one of our biggest is turning up unannounced without a gift. A second is letting our food go cold and wasting it without eating it. A third is staying silent after inviting yourself to dinner unannounced. Unless you rectify immediately, I am regrettably going to have to ask you to leave.
I'm so sorry, Ambassador, I said, taking a hasty sip of soup and rather regretting the local policy of a 10-course banquet for visiting dignitaries. But if you will kindly just wait a few minutes more, I will be able to tell you why we're here.
Not without a gift, or an explanation.
J looked at me thoughtfully, then shrugged and picked up 15 doughnuts, one on each finger, and dabbed them into a bowl of icing sugar. But I haven't got anything. We're in a bit of a rush to leave. Oh, wait, I said, rushing back to the shuttle and returning out of breath several minutes later. Ah, a foosball. It's a sport played on Habridas. Apparently. J picked the foosball up, and before I could stop him, he had licked it. Geraldine was looking at me angrily out the corner of her eye, as if I'd blown the whole thing, but to my joy he put the whole thing in his mouth and crunched.
Very nice,
he said.
It would go well with some extra gluten. You must have the most wonderful time on Decreeta. I hear it's a beautiful place full of the best cooking from all 10 planets.
I hadn't the heart to tell him he was wrong, so I simply carried on. There's a lot more in my shuttle. You're welcome to the lot, if only you will help us. I hoped inwardly that the Belobrat foosball team had plenty spare, but after all this was an emergency, and if my plan didn't work there would be no more foosball ever again, I thought to myself glumly. I glanced at my watch and triple-checked that I was working off Decreeta time still, and not Ducius, knowing well that their days were short thanks to the speed their planet travelled around the sun.
So the meal times come round much quicker,
I remembered a Dewsbury giant explaining to me. Finally the time was up, and I nodded at Geraldine, both of us looking at each other, and wondering how best to break it to our hosts that the universe might be in danger. Phew, we have the next 8 hours to talk now, as the Footsard thinks I'll be asleep. Ambassador, we are sorry to be the bearers of bad news, but aliens from outside our half of the universe have invaded Earth, captured their Prime Minister, and are travelling to Decreeta, where we fear we may have imprisoned all of the IPO, except me. We desperately need your help. J was so shocked he dropped his last doughnut, which fell into the soup tureen, which he absent-mindedly picked up and licked anyway. I carried on. They want me to surrender our half of the universe over to them, but I've nothing I can offer them. After all, these 10 planets aren't mine to give, but maybe these aliens don't work the way we do. Everything seems to be colonised over there, like some of our shared history on this side of the universe used to be, rather than independent friends and neighbours. We don't know anything about these aliens at all. They haven't proved themselves to be particularly reasonable so far, but perhaps I'm myself being prejudiced, because they come from so far away. Maybe they're the most honourable of a lot of us, and I can take them at their word. J was so shocked he stopped eating, and absent-mindedly fiddled with his napkin.
From outside our half of the universe, you say? Is that even possible? Well, I am sorry for Earth, and for your people, of course, but as the planet they're invading is not strictly in the IPO anyway, I don't see that there's much we can do. We will, of course, grant you asylum on Ducius for as long as you want it. I'm surprised you're here, not back on Mars.
I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. The problem is, Ambassador, we don't think we'll stop at Earth, or Decreeta. My friend here. Hi, said Geraldine, caught munching a particularly sticky Ducius pastry. Was there when the aliens invaded. She says it is their custom that they can only conquer a planet if their leader accedes to them. I can't do anything to the people on them till then. Luckily I escaped.
Oh,
said J.
Problem solved then. Lucky escape indeed. Thank you for letting us know in person. We should have a celebratory banquet before you leave.
It's a bit more difficult than that, sir, I said. It seems likely that they will just keep chasing me around the universe till they find me. And then I suspect they will just conquer all 10 of our planets, not just Earth.
Then why have you come here?
Said J, horrified and spluttering profiteroles out of the side of his mouth in alarm. We didn't know where to go, said Geraldine helplessly. The good thing is, I continued, these aliens don't know where we are right now. All they might get from the IPO is that I was last seen travelling to Earth. The only way they'll be able to trace me is through the Footsard recording, and that is a few days' delay because, well, IPO stuff. Even then there are gaps each day when it isn't recording, and we're free to speak. We have done our best not to reveal the planet we're on. I only hope these aliens don't work out which one it is.
Then your quest is easy,
said J nobly.
You can hide here. These aliens need never hear where you are. They won't get word from us. Let's just hope that they're shorter-lived creatures than ourselves.
I was touched by this kind offer, but knew I had to refuse. I'm very grateful, but it's more complex than that, I'm afraid. You see, my presidency changes in the next few days, and if these aliens really have flown to Decreeta, there won't be a thing we can do to stop them. There might not be anything we can do to stop them anyway. JJJJJ looked confused and scratched his ear absent-mindedly with a breadstick.
Then why not go to Helisphere and raise an army? The IPO must have some sort of resources to cope with it. Dewsbury's never fight unless it's over food.
Sadly, I shook my head. The Belobrat spent all the budget, and there's no one left to fight. Anyway, it sounds from what Geraldine tells me as if all our armies combined won't be enough to stop these aliens who seem very aggressive. We're here not to put you in danger or raise an army, but because we need a safe port of call to think, to get away from Earth in case they come back. We had to land somewhere, said Geraldine sadly. We were running out of fuel. We'll gladly leave after tonight, I continued, if we have your permission to refuel and rest. It's been quite a day. Of course, said JJJJJJ, and I understand your dilemma. We fully believe in the strength of community between planets. Discovering other worlds was one of the best things that ever happened to us, if only for all the new recipes we've discovered on the 9 other worlds. I'm just naturally concerned for my people. We know, said Geraldine. The problem is we're all in danger unless we can find some way of defeating these aliens. We need to think of something, and fast. She turned to me. Please, President Eleron, for the sake of all of us, please tell me about your plan. I've been dying to hear it. JJJJJ also leaned forward in his chair so expectantly and knocked a gravy shuttle boat over the next-door salad. Well, I said, I'm still thinking it through, and I'm not sure how good it is just yet. Tell me, have the materials I commissioned a few days ago for the peace statues arrived yet? I crossed everything, including my tail, in the hope that Bob would agree to my policy in time as he said he'd had, rather than leaving it on his desk as before.
Yes,
said JJJJJ.
We ran a competition and one of our brightest and best art students is all set to sculpt it. But surely you don't think a peace statue is going to put off a swarm of alien killers?
Yes, Eleron, said Geraldine kindly. I know you always think differently to most, but that plan really is a little on the naive side. No, that's not what I mean exactly, I said. I want to change the plan somewhat. Do you think you can build me some giant Dusius feet, perhaps 10 feet high or so? Do you think your student can make it hollow in some way? Oh, and if I could borrow one of your extra super large Dusius shuttles for our future journey, that would be perfect. My companions looked at me blankly. Eleron, said Geraldine gently, it's been a stressful day. I understand that you might not be quite yourself right now. No, seriously, this is my plan. Listen, we can't fight them with weapons, right? These aliens sound too well trained for that, potentially have a head start on us by millions of years, maybe quadzillions. We can't fight them with words. From what you've told me, Geraldine, they don't seem the sort that will listen. What we do have, though, is quality and quantity. You said they didn't seem to know much about any of us. No, said Geraldine. I heard them asking Doris how many species of us there were. They didn't seem to know anything about Earth, and seemed surprised at the idea of hybrid species. Good, I said, my plan forming. So if these aliens don't know the truth, how about making up a new alien president? One that's made up of every being on our side of the universe, and is about 100 foot tall. I always wanted to be bigger. Maybe, said Geraldine, thinking this over. What about quantity? How many shuttles are there in the universe capable of travelling to Decreeta? I asked.
Several quadzillion, I should think,
said JJJJJJ.
The Mechions have a mass supply chain going in trade for the models they can't get on my homeworld. There are a good 500 of them on this planet alone.
How many people would be willing to put themselves in danger for the universe, do you think? JJJJJ thought for a moment, twirling spaghetti around his fork absent-mindedly, till the whole bowl seemed to be on it.
Half of it, maybe. Perhaps not the Habitats. Probably not the Belobrat. Almost definitely not the Glad-to-Hardits. The humans would probably want to, but not be allowed by their leaders.
I shot a glance at Geraldine, who nodded. That sounds about right. What are you thinking, Eleron? Well, I said, from what you've told me, it sounds like we won't have a chance against these aliens in a straight fight, but we can either try to deceive them or outnumber them. They have the greater weapons, but what we do have on our side is a sort of peace and unity. They've managed to conquer the planets in their solar system, from what I understand, because they defeated them, but one by one. They only have one world's worth of beings now. There are only a dozen of them actually here. They can't possibly conquer us all if quadzillions of us work together and combine the best of everything each of our planets has to offer. We are 10 very different species and have 10 very different viewpoints. If we can combine them, then surely we will be more of an unstoppable force than one species whose only reason for being is to fight and conquer.
Maybe,
said JJJJJ cautiously.
but there are a few holes in your plan. The peace we've had is tenuous. It's only held for 200 years, which is no match for perhaps several million years of fighting on their side. The Earth, the one planet the Agrosians have actually declared war on, aren't technically part of the peace agreement anyway, and it seems unlikely the other species would step in to save them. And cooperation might not be enough to stop their weapons. They'll just attack us all one by one, I fear, regardless of how many treaties they break.
But, I said, my plan still slowly forming in my mind, they don't know that. They haven't learnt of our history, and hopefully the Futzard thing is cut off by now, so they'll never know it. All they'll have seen of our part of the universe is 2 planets, one of them filled with creatures from all 10 worlds. They don't know our true size or our population or what weapons we have. What if we invent a creature so big and terrible that even they will quake with fear, and pretend that there are more of them out there on another planet somewhere? After all, I learnt on Mars, that's what you do with bullies who are bigger than you. You pretend to be bigger than them in some way. I must write a treaty one day on why running the universe is just using the lessons I learnt at school, only on a vaster scale. Tell them a big whopping lie, you mean? Geraldine countered. But how do we manage this in time? We only have a few days. JJJJJ coughed at this.
If I might be permitted to intervene, thankfully this Futzard invention hasn't made it to Ducius yet, but the Universal has, and I believe, following the unfortunate events in your childhood, Eleron, it is now available everywhere except Earth. It's running on real time too, and like your device. What if I put out a plea to all of Ducius to pretend to be these creatures you speak of at a set time, to follow you in your shuttle? If these beings really are tracing you using it, as you so fear, then if all of us swamp it all at the same time, then maybe that will scare them.
Yes, I said, conspiratorially. Would you contact all the 10 known worlds for me and tell me that we need their help, of what we're planning to do? If they could send their shuttles with us at some pre-agreed time, that would be brilliant too.
I think it would be better if you do that while you're here, Eleron,
said JJJJJ.
People will listen if it comes from you. They won't if it comes from me. Only those on my planet know my name. Certainly only people from my planet know how to pronounce it.
I was quite stunned by this revelation. Me? But honestly, I'm nobody. I'm just a Humrasianart who got lucky, that people feel sorry for. The IPO stands for very little, so I've discovered. Barely anyone would know who I was, and those probably wouldn't like me. Your voice would carry more weight, JJJJJ. JJJJJ and Geraldine looked at each other. Eleron, said Geraldine as comfortingly as she could, I don't fully know what happened on Decreeta and what affected you, but right now you're the most important being in the universe, perhaps the most important one that ever lived. No, I said, I'm just standing in for Horace. He's the one to get you out of this mess, really. I'm just playing for time and hopefully getting reinforcements together. I don't think so, said Geraldine, shaking her head. It has to be you. For all we know, Horace is dead, and even if he isn't, then chances are he's a prisoner. You're the leader of a free universe now, like it or not. Whether or not you think you're capable, whether or not you think you truly earn the right to be there, circumstances mean that keeping you safe for the next few days is our priority, followed by working out a way of stopping these aliens. I was grateful for my companion's support, but my head was still whirring and problem-solving. But how do I pass on word without broadcasting our plans through the Universal, where they might be listening?
I have an idea,
said JJJJJ.
Let me record your message, and then when you're gone, and on the run again, I will make sure each and every planet hears it. I doubt these aliens will be listening out for an official Ducius broadcast somehow, and even if they do, all they'll know is that you've been here, but that you've left already.
Will they believe us, though, I asked. If I know the Habradats, they'll just think it's all some practical joke. The rest of the universe might not be that understanding either. We could go and visit them, said Geraldine suddenly. We'd pick up the statue parts we need on the way, and you go and deliver your speeches in person, so every planet knows it's true. Of course. Thank you, both of you. This plan is looking clearer now than it did inside my head, I said. The only question is, can I write a speech that will motivate everyone? We need help from every planet if this is to work. Have I got what it takes to inspire so many different beings scattered across our part of the universe and ask them to risk their lives? Eleron, said Geraldine, holding my wing, that's the part of being president you were made for. Your vice president can never do that as well as you.
Universal entry pause is DOC 784-623-8464-DS. Mirage Universal Systems Key Code, Official Documents, /A, Acting President Eleron. Headline, Unity Speech, retrieved from the Universal Records Office.
So it was that I found myself sitting at a giant Dusius desk, algebra quill in hand, trying to compose a letter that would attempt to save us all in just a few hours.
Dear Universe, are you sitting down? Well, you won't be once you've heard this message, I'm afraid. This is your Intergalactic President Eleron speaking. This wasn't the first message I was expecting to have with you. I was hoping that my term in office would be about reaching out and helping all of you. Instead, circumstances mean that it is me hoping that you'll reach out and help me. The universe is under threat from a group of aliens who have arrived from the other side of a galaxy. We don't know their plans fully yet, but they have threatened to enslave the Earth and make it part of their intergalactic empire, and to destroy anyone who refuses. I stress that this is a real threat to all of us. I'm alarmed to tell you that their weapons appear to be more mighty and powerful than anything we have seen in any of our collective histories. I do have a plan that I hope might work, but to do it I need your help, and not just from some of you, but as many of you as possible. We need statue parts made in whatever local rock each planet has, as quickly as you can, carved to the specifications that JJJJJ will pass on to you with this message. We also need as many of the special gadgets you use on your world as possible. Weapons if you have them, but anything unique to your world that will make a flash, or a bang, or something similar to confuse the enemy will do. Finally, most of all, we need you all to gather at a particular time after we have travelled around the universe, gathering up as many of these items as possible. I hear your argument, that Earth is the only planet under a direct threat, that they chose to leave our peace union, and we have no responsibilities for them anymore. Technically, even logically, you are right. However, one thing I've learned in this job already is that where one of us falls, all of us fall. Our lives are so intertwined that even on the most isolated of our 10 planets, these aliens will surely find out about the rest of us and come for us too. We need to stand together and fight as best we can. Believe me, I understand the irony of being the head of an intergalactic peace organisation and delivering you this declaration of war. But alas, it happens to be true. There is no one else out there coming to help us. No benevolent species out there to save us. No secret army primed and ready to go. All you have is me, and the friends I've made along this journey. If that doesn't seem enough to you, then, well, I'm not altogether sure that sounds enough to me either. As much as I've been coached through my years as a politician to always pretend that things are going well, I've learned that it is more responsible to tell you the truth. I'm scared, dear universe, of what this new threat to our way of life means for all of us, and I weep at the thought of what might be lost and what I have to ask you all to do. However, it is better to do something, to try to fight this new threat on our terms rather than surrender on theirs. I know that I've no great specialities to lead you, and I'm no better than any of you. Inside I quake like a glabdahardit, feel as alienated as a clandesprod in the wrong clan, and my emotions are as jumbled up as any human's. However, I stand here before you, trying to be as brave as I can, ready to face my worst enemies, with all the courage I can muster. I hope that as many of you as possible can face them alongside me when the time comes. However, I reach out for your help as more than just a futile gesture. We have many things on our side that I don't believe these aliens can match. Though terrible in firepower, we outnumber them many zillions to one. Though they appear to have an empire, their conglomerate of planets is based on fright and terror, and their fierce hold on that side of the universe is, I believe, no match for our friendship and loyalty when things are put to the test. We also have the element of surprise. These beings know very little of us. We might yet be able to scare them more than they scare us. I have a plan. I don't know if it will work, and I don't know what the sacrifices in implementing it will be, but I ask you to see it through with me and help me as much as you can. The details of our plan will be finalised by us and appended to this voice scroll by JJJJJ. Please know that I'm grateful for anyone ready to risk everything in helping us, But I still believe that, together, the universe can yet be in safe hands, or wings, or flippers, or hooves, or robotic limbs. I am only sorry we didn't get to know each other better before I came asking for your help. Please know that, on my end, I would do anything to keep all of you safe, whatever the cost may be to me. From the smallest Clabderhearted to the mightiest Dewsbury giant, you are all my friends, and I care for you all. Hoping to see you on the other side in a few days' time. Be brave, dear friends. Your affectionate President, Eleron.
This is the official seal of the IPO, unboxing planets one peaceful action at a time.
Will that do? I asked Geraldine hopefully, after passing the voice scroll to my two companions and getting JJJJ's agreement to broadcast it wide and far with our specific instructions. Her response was a hug. Was that just a human way of being polite? I really didn't know. My mother had taught me many things about life on Earth, but she had never imagined such a scenario as this one coming to pass. Well, it was too late to do anything else now.
Universal entry, pause, AP54493649247. Rouse Universal Systems key code, acting, President Eleron. Headline, mission to Decius 2, retrieved from Universal Records Office.
We desperately wanted to stay up all night talking and plotting, but Geraldine very sensibly pointed out that we needed our rest, and that if we were being tracked on the footsard, then we needed to be well on our way in the morning without giving anything away. JJJJJ showed us to the usual ambassadorial rooms for unexpected guests, which looked from the outside like a giant meringue. After deciding on a suite each, either side of a visiting Dewsbury dignitary, local Dewsbury butlers delivered box after box to our rooms. "What's all this?" asked Geraldine, watching in amazement as the boxes built up into a tower.
Cereal, sorry, madam, for your breakfast, in the morning,
said a passing Dewsbury giant. "And what's that?" I asked, as a second Dewsbury giant turned up with an overgrown Agrosian on a lead.
Your milk, sorry, madam, for your cereal.
"We can't eat all that," Geraldine said, laughing. "First rule of diplomacy," I whispered to her. "Pretend you're grateful for something, and then make up an excuse to get out of it later." "Thank you for your most wonderful and noble gifts," I said out loud. "Decreeta thanks you." The Dewsbury smiled and walked off. "Now then," I said to Geraldine, "watch and learn." 14 boxes of cereal later, the Agrosian was looking a bit queasy. "He looks as if he's about to be sick. He's staying in your room tonight, not mine," Geraldine laughed. "Good night, Eleron. See you in the morning." I stopped her as she was about to walk into a suite. There were a million things I had to say to her, but all I could think of to say was, "Good night, Geraldine, and thank you. This would have been a terrible thing to bear on my own." "It's a pretty awful thing to bear with too," she said, turning before pausing a second time. "Eleron, I really hope your plan works." "I really hope it does too, or we're all doomed." "Sleep well, if you can," I laughed. "You too," Geraldine giggled back.
This is awful,
Sighed Rrr.
What can we do?
Whispered Odebeggar.
They've shut out the phone lines, so we can't warn other planets, and we can't risk using the Universal, so we don't dare get hold of Eleron just yet.
I don't see how we're going to get out of this one,
agreed alike.
I think logically we have to accept that our time is up, peacefully and quietly.
I know, whispered Lawrence. My poor electorate. I was meant to be keeping them safe.
Never mind your electorate,
scoffed Bob.
What about us? We're the ones in immediate danger, and I'm too brilliant to die. What do we do, Horace?
Asked her. The IPO were tied up and thrown together in a corner of the IPO hall, where some of the Agrosian hive walked up and down, keeping a watchful eye on them. Horace had been trying to organise a resistance, but all he was getting from the IPO was, well, resistance. The beings around him were too scared and panicked to do much, and Horace had never fully earned their trust in the time they'd been together. Just for a moment, before he banished it forever into a black hole of forgetfulness. The thought struck him that much as he'd spent his incarceration wishing he'd been out there being dashing and heroic instead of Eleron, maybe, just maybe, they would have been better off with Eleron here instead of him, raising the troops and their morale. He knew that he wasn't very good at inspiring others, never having really had to do it before, and suddenly he realised how hard it was. He was more used to either ordering people around or being ordered in turn. Politics had never really been about thinking or envisioning anything for Horace, which is why Eleron's idea seemed so ridiculous to him. Still, though, he was the only one in charge here, and he had to try.
Right, you lot, he hissed. The best way we're going to solve this is to brainstorm it, so I've assigned you all into random pairs. I will give you all an hour, and then call you back in to see what you've come up with.
Yes, boss, murmured 6 different voices, some of them muffled from the positions they had been thrown in. Or Jane just squeaked in terror, and Bob jabbered away to himself about how he was the most important person in the room, and why wouldn't the Agrosians just listen to him? An hour later, Horace's mind was pretty blank, but he was sure his IPO colleagues would have some ideas, and ask them for their thoughts.
Well,
said Oda Beggar.
What we need is a spiritual reaction. We need to look past any petty disagreements we might have with these creatures and look towards higher things. There must be something we have in common. I think the best thing to do is to wait and hope for their karma to get the better of them.
Rubbish!
Said like.
They're pointing great big pointing weapons at us. The logical thing is to be proactive, to strike against them before they have a chance to strike against us.
But isn't that exactly what they're doing?
Yes, is that a bad thing?
Horace looked at the strange alien rope tied around his middle.
You could say that, and I don't see how any of us could get hold of any missiles from our home planets from here, even if they weren't bound across our half of the universe, although I suspect these aliens have weapons a quadrillion times stronger than anything we have anyway.
He sighed and looked around.
Any ideas?
Said Jane.
We know them like so,
said Mordothus. We endeavour to prevail and prevaricate upon their understanding of the terms of their treaties and ensure that the outcome is the most favourable as possible regarding the party of the first party, namely the Intergalactic Peace Party, said Cody.
We split them off from their home clan and make them feel like outsiders,
said Lawrence.
We eat now, for tomorrow we may die,
said
What? Well, it's as good a suggestion as any, isn't it?
He turned to Horace.
How about you? You're our leader. You must have thought of something, Horace.
But all he could think was,
I can't do this. I was born for mediocre planet running. I don't have the charisma we need right now. I wish people weren't relying on me so. I really hope Eleron is coming back and we haven't scared him off for good. The universe needs him so badly right now.
Universal entry, pause, AB54493649277. Mars Universal Systems Key Code, acting President Eleron. Headline, Mission to Dusius 3, retrieved from the Universal Records Office.
Somehow things had seemed brighter and more possible in the daytime, and in company than they were at night alone. It had been an accidental masterstroke to end up on Dusius, where JJJJJ had been so helpful, and for a time I had almost forgotten the great danger Airglow and the others were all in. As I lay there, though, struggling to sleep, lost in the middle of a suitably giant 4-poster bed, which was the biggest I had ever seen, with an unfamiliar pattern of various contrasting moonlights dancing on the ceiling, the danger suddenly seemed more real and more frightening. Was Airglow all right, I wondered to myself. The time since our fallout had given me the luxury of forgiveness, as I went through a catalogue of happy memories in my mind, the way I always did when in search of encouragement. After all, I would not have had the confidence to be in this position at all had it not been for her belief in me. As bad as it was being responsible for all the beings in our half of the universe, it was still better than watching someone else be responsible for them all somehow. I just hoped, illogically, that even if I couldn't save the universe, then maybe I could at least save her. Even if captured, working in slavery or imprisoned somewhere, at least we might yet be together again, and I wouldn't be so lonely. Somehow I drew great strength from that thought. My thoughts slowly spread to the others. Were they all captured by now, or worse? Would they be wondering where I was, and expecting me to charge in and rescue them in some way? I knew in the logical Mrasianart side of my brain that barging in and risking all probably wouldn't have helped them, and certainly wouldn't help anyone else. The human side of me, though, felt irrational and guilty, tortured by the thought that I was free, while the ones I loved were likely not. I had to do things my way, though, I reasoned. I had to think of the bigger picture, or soon perhaps all of the people out there would be feeling anxious about their loved ones, the way I was right now. In my guilt, I tried sending out a few telepathic messages to Airglow, the way we had shared when we were very close as children, and I waited in the still and the darkness for some message to come back. But alas, nothing came. Instead of some grand vision, all that I discovered instead was that the cylindrical objects left out on the bed, which I had taken to be pillows, turned out to be gigantic marshmallows, with a note attached to them saying they were for snacking on in the night. I felt sick with grief, though, and quite possibly the amount of food I had eaten earlier, so threw them across the room instead. I went to wash my sticky head. Fed up of not sleeping in bed, I went to stare out the open window, in order that I could not sleep there either, feeling the distinctive gentler winds of an alien planet properly for the first time after the blizzards of Decreeta. The Dewsburys all seemed to be night creatures, and it was almost as busy outside now as it had been during the day when we had arrived, with people munching, crunching, slurping, singing, calling out recipes, meeting other people for meal times, buying goods for their meals the following day. I felt responsible suddenly for all of them. It had been easier somehow when the universe consisted of the people I knew from one planet, plus some angry Earth people, and a bit of my imagination. But watching these locals, as flesh and blood in front of me, the enormity of my task overwhelmed me once again. Did I really have what it took to do what I needed to do? Me, the frilled politician who had apparently only got where he had thanks to his backstory and some fine words. Suddenly these words seemed less than fine tonight. I stared again at the sky, at the infinity of space, and saw myself against it, weakened and humbled, a pinprick of light that was about to be exterminated, along all those other beams of light, caught against the vastness of space. I tried every trick in the book to quell my aching mind, every last bit of advice that I had picked up from my life on Mars, of envisioning myself on fluffy clouds, of embracing the unknown future like a friend, imagining better times and happier worlds, of counting algebraphs, jumping over a fence. None of it did any good. Finally I made a bargain with the darkness that if I got out of this alive I would do better, and begged for a sign that I wasn't as alone as I felt right then. Just as I had got lost inside the darkness of my own thoughts, however, a window from a meringue room 2 doors away from mine opened, and I saw Geraldine putting her head through it, to do much what I was doing, before I caught her eye, and she grinned up at me. "So you can't sleep either," she yelled over to me. "No," I yelled back. "There's something about the destruction of the universe that's really bad for my Humrasianart insomnia." She grinned back. "I was all ready to blame my insomnia on you snoring next door. I had it all planned what I was going to say tomorrow morning. But if you've not been asleep either, I guess I can't." "Have you tried out the pillows yet?" I asked. "No," Geraldine called back. "Should I? Are they comfy?" "They're very soft," I cried back as Geraldine went back to her bed, followed a moment later by a cry of anguish as she rushed back to the window. "You pest, Eleron! I'm all sticky! What on earth were they thinking of, leaving gigantic marshmallows on the bed like that? I'm so stuffed I won't eat another thing for weeks." I laughed my Mrasianart socks off at this, and Geraldine joined in too. "And to think I voted for you, intergalactic planetary joker, you're worse than a habridat," she cried, throwing the remains of a marshmallow at my window. I held mine back. To our shock, the window in between ours opened just in time for us both to attempt to hurl our second pillows at each other.
"Stop that noise!"
"Oh," said the posh-looking Dewsbury lady with a crown on top of her head as she got the full force in the face. "We're awfully sorry, madam," I said, shamefaced, as I threw her a towel.
"Throwing food at someone else, extraordinary! The very idea! Why, it breaks every principle this planet holds dear," said our neighbour. "Are all off-worlders this rough? I've a good mind to report you both to the IPO."
"Oh, I wouldn't do that, ma'am," said Geraldine, laughing. "I think their leader already knows." Our neighbour looked us up and down.
"Humans, the pair of you! I might have guessed."
"He's only half human, on his mother's side. The rest of him is Mrasianart," said Geraldine, giggling.
"Then he should have more sense,"
came the reply.
"Kindly go to sleep, the pair of you, and stop making so much noise. And for Ducius' sake, stop wasting food."
Suitably chastened, we did. The interruption had done its job at relieving the tension, though, and rather to my surprise, I fell into a deep, if shortened and chaotic, sleep. Or was it sleep? Through my hazy dream state I felt Airglow crying out to me telepathically. I couldn't work out what she was saying, for in her panic all her thoughts came at the exact same time, over and over, in a jumbled up mess I couldn't decipher. It rained down on me in clumps of despair and loneliness, and as I began to get used to the sight, I think I worked out that she was hiding under a bed. Good, then she was safe, for now at least, and there didn't seem to be any of these aliens with her. How much could I trust this vision, though? struggling to remember how we used to do this. I tried to send comforting thoughts that I was safe and on my way to get help. But even as I sent these thoughts, I wondered how true they were. How much help could we get? Airglow, I cry with all my mind. I'm so sorry I got you into this. Stay strong. I'm coming. I'll save you, no matter what. Somehow, some way. Finally, after sending this message over and over against the barrage of feelings coming from her, I felt it finally get through, and an instant sense of relief. Airglow hadn't been quite sure what was going on downstairs when the Agrosians had arrived. She had heard a lot of shouting, a lot of voices she didn't recognise, and at one point she heard discussion so close it must have been at the bottom of the stairs, but nobody had come any nearer towards her. At first Airglow was annoyed. Now she wasn't the President's wife anymore, or at least wasn't for much longer. She had clearly been forgotten about. Well, she would soon show these inferior single-bred creatures that she was still their superior. She would just wait, with dignity. As time went on, though, she began to realise that something serious might have happened. Nervously peeking out of the curtains, her eyes confirmed it. There was indeed a space shuttle parked outside. While spacecraft was far from a specialist subject, Airglow had seen enough to realise that this one didn't look anything like any other shuttle she had ever seen. Had Eleron been right then? About aliens from another world? It had seemed so far-fetched that she had dismissed it as a fault of her husband's very active imagination, perhaps a desire for attention, or an admittance of weakness that Airglow had never really understood, or perhaps an excuse to run far away from her. Now, though, she wondered if Eleron hadn't been right after all, and in her head Airglow was already planning the celebratory ball for after the moment her brave, clever husband saved the universe. It would surely be around to rescue her any minute. All she had to do was be brave and keep an eye out for his arrival outside the window, something she convinced herself she could do perfectly well from hiding under the nearest bed with her back to it. Telling herself that this was important self-preservation, and she wasn't acting at all like those inferior glad-hearted creatures, honest. She moved as silently as she could, gathered up all the provisions she could find. A good job she had ordered her own personal food replicator on her and Eleron's staff account after all, and prayed that she hadn't been spotted. Eventually she fell asleep, but it was a strange kind of sleep, half dreaming, half projecting, as her troubled mind wouldn't let her rest, and she kept thinking she could hear strange noises outside the door. Indeed, she was more than a little surprised that no one had come through it, for even if the space shuttle she saw outside had been benign, she had fully expected somebody to walk past by now. It had been hours. Maybe the IPO weren't speaking to her for the way she had treated Eleron, but then she had been one of them, and they should be on her side. It had actually felt good to belong to a crowd in this way for once, and have an automatic audience to control. No, something must have gone terribly wrong. Airglow wasn't about to see what it was, though. Not yet. She was too used to other people sorting things out for her. A sudden thought came to her in panic, though. She had never had any doubts before that Eleron would be back after his wild goose chase, the way he always was. Good old dependable Eleron. If there was danger, though, would he rush back to rescue her? Could he rush back to rescue her? Would he even try? He had seemed uncharacteristically crushed by their last conversation, but surely he knew she didn't really mean it. He wouldn't leave her here to die, would he? Well, if he did, then she was better off without that no-good, rotten, sneaky, lying hybrid anyway. How she wished that she could speak to Eleron. One more time, though. Suddenly she remembered her early years, when they had talked telepathically, half a planet away, and she was the only creature in the world lucky enough to hear this Humrasianart's earliest thoughts, which had seemed unique and special, even then. She thought that she had nothing to lose, she would try it again. But when she did, she had the weirdest sights, not what she expected at all. Eleron talking to some strange human-looking creature out of the window, in a room she didn't recognise, surrounded by giant marshmallows that he flung at some strange, ginormous creature hanging out the window. Airglow told herself to check with the universal records on dream meanings in the morning to work out what all this laden symbolism meant. She tried calling to Eleron, but it was only later, when he pulled away from the window and went to sleep, that she felt she had made any progress, and even then she couldn't really tell what her husband was saying to her. At least she felt some form of connection with him, though, and sensed that he was still alive. Good. She took some comfort, too, that Eleron had a plan, and was trying to tell her to do something. If only she could work out what it was. Airglow fell asleep, still trying to communicate, knocking the food replicator with her leg as she twitched. She held her breath, but to her relief all the replicator machine did was silently spurt giant marshmallows at her head. Ah, so that was why she had seen marshmallows in her dream. Cognitive foretelling. Neat. She would look that up on the Universal in the morning too, depending, of course, where she would be by the morning. Had Airglow known that she'd been simply forgotten by the IPO and overlooked by the Agrosians, she might have felt very differently. However, the aliens from the other side of the universe, so used to living together in one giant hive, hadn't even given a thought to the idea that there might be other creatures in separate rooms. The Agrosians didn't have the concept of multiple floors, and had certainly never considered the possibility of stairs, so that even when the Agrosian Hive Patrol walked up and down past the bottom of them, and the corridor leading out of the assembly hall, they never thought to explore them. Instead they, or at least their queen, were staring in fascination at the Universal, a nervous Bob having shown her how to work it. Not that it worked very well, given Decreeta's notoriously spotty connection. The gadget kept coming up with the phrase "limited service," so it wouldn't show pictures or any detail. Even so, all that information about what to plunder and where to find it all in one handy gadget made Queen Calixta's head spin so hard she was surprised the crown didn't fall off. Agrosia had never thought to invest in technology for the sake of learning in any generation. Any invention made on their planet was always given over to making their weapons faster, nastier, quicker, pointier. The whole reason for being was to conquer and enslave, and even the primitive technology created by planets eventually conquered on the other side of the galaxy had only ever been preserved if they helped with the Agrosians' grand scheme of conquest in some way. This was different. Queen Calixta had never seen a civilization as advanced as this one on this side of the universe, even if their power seemed to be intermittent. Nervously, the Royal Agrosian demanded a look at the universe's weaponry, unsure if the IPO was just a front for some gigantic missile that was about to blow them sky high, because, well, that's what she would have done with access to this technology. But no, she soon discovered that after the events of Endurance, the Earth, the last remaining planet with weaponry of any kind, had agreed to protocols to dismantle all their large missiles, and thus it had been 250 years since any sort of destructive weapon beyond archaic pistols and swords and bows and arrows existed in this half of the universe. As for Eleron, Queen Calixta had been unable to access any files on him directly, but she had discovered the Futzard. The footage she watched was most confusing, however. It was all recorded from his president's point of view, so she didn't get to see his face. Or so she assumed, even though he seemed to be very close to the ground, so maybe it was recorded at knee height, she supposed. The footage wasn't that interesting either, and mostly seemed to consist of aliens shouting at each other. This only made Queen Calixta more certain that Eleron was a weak leader, one that could be easily manipulated and goaded into action. She was content to be patient, and spent her time learning as much as she could about the opposition, to find out all about their weaknesses, and dream about the resources from all 10 planets that would soon be hers. Throughout all this, Horace had very quickly assumed command, quietly nodding or shaking his head whenever one or other of the IPO was interrogated by the Agrosians, and dictating just how many of their secrets should be given away. He knew that he was just playing for time, and in truth had little faith in Eleron's ability to do anything practical. After all, Mrasianarts and humans alike weren't known for their military might, and he'd spent enough nights before the election laughing hopelessly at Eleron's naive and practical peacenik speeches. Horace had been surprised by his president before, though, and was secretly rather pleased that he hadn't just come bumbling back to Decreeta to get them all killed, as he himself might have done. Horace imagined that Eleron had run far away on hearing the news of the attack on Earth, and couldn't say who blamed him. Well, as long as he stayed away, they were safe. That was the main thing. Even if Queen Calixta would surely find out where he was hiding in the end. Either that or a few days would run out, and it would be Horace signing over the death warrant of this side of the universe. That, though, was all in the future, and as a proud Habridat, Horace had learnt long ago not to worry about tomorrow, when he still had time to waste today. As time went on, he actually became more hopeful about things, but Eleron wasn't about to come back and put them all at risk, and he began to breathe more easily and feel more in control of the situation. However, that wasn't true of his colleagues, who were beginning to fray at the edges. So far they had stood it remarkably well. Even the Glabdahardits had only spent half their time under the table quaking. As the day moved into night, and back into day again, however, he could feel the mood in the room change. The Agrosians didn't seem to need sleep, and certainly didn't understand the concept when he tried to explain it to them, and many of his team were getting increasingly rattled with tiredness. Over time the Mrasianart had started to become more withdrawn, and seemed to be disassociating, as he drifted further into meditation. The Mechion was becoming more of a risk-taker with each passing hour as he sized up the logic of what he could get away with against the Agrosians who, as far as Horace could tell, weren't logical at all. The clandestine had gone from trying to cheer the others up to becoming morose and worrying loudly about where Eleron was. The Glabdahard had become worn out by fear. The McGrumph had become ever tetchier. The Camalosian more confused. The Dewsbury giant hungrier. It was Bob who alarmed him most, though. The loudest and most self-confident member of the team had, in the time it took Decreeta to revolve once around the sun, devolved into a nervous, panicked soul, all too eager to lie and to sell the rest of them out if it bought him his life. His need to talk and his desire to ingratiate himself with Queen Calixta had not gone down at all well with his colleagues, and Horace began to fear what might happen next, to him or to all of them. None of that mattered, though, as long as Eleron was using this time wisely. Horace wasn't used to thinking and worrying about things he had no control over, and smiled inwardly at the thought that he had suddenly turned into Eleron, who could also really do with a nap right now. But no, Queen Calixta was in his face again, with what she just learnt from the Universal. What were the most economically active planets? What natural resources did Decreeta have? Was there a way of storing the intense sunlight that powered Zigguris free? Why did the Glabdahardites keep eeping at each other? What were these earthlings called crumpets, and why have they suddenly become a valuable commodity on Ducius? Horace tried to answer as much as he could, but honestly he had never taken much of an interest in anything outside Habridas, and even then he wasn't interested in a lot. Eleron would know, he thought to himself. He seemed to know everything without the need to research it. It should be him here answering these questions, or he was off being dashingly brave and handsome. However, Horace knew his role was a vital one, and that the IPO staff were relying on him to keep them calm. Somehow, despite the dangers, he had managed to hold on to his laid-back charm, and to calm everyone down just enough to keep it together. Even the Glabdahardites, sort of. If only he could keep it up.
Universal entry, pause, AP54493649277, Mars Universal Systems Key Code, acting, President Eleron. Headline, Mission to Ducius 4, retrieved from the Universal Records Office.
The next morning we were up before even the Wazula birds were singing, and I bumped into my companion outside our rooms, trying to navigate her way around the biggest breakfast buffet I'd ever seen. "I saw her, Geraldine," I said. "Eglo, she's still alive. She's all right, I think." "How?" asked Geraldine in between bites of a breakfast fungi so large it didn't leave mushroom on a plate. "What did you see?" It was odd. She was hiding under a bed with her head sticking out, and it was covered in marshmallows. "Like the ones we had as pillows?" "Yes, but smaller, of course." "That sounds like a dream to me," she said, looking at me sceptically. "Possibly caused by the lingering effects of the marshmallows we ate last night." She turned and looked at me quizzically, perhaps noticing the way I tensed up. "But if it brings you hope..." "It has to," I said. "Eglo is like my lucky talisman. Everything started falling into place once she was around." "In what way?" said Geraldine, confused, buttering toast that was thick enough to constitute an entire loaf back home. Well, it was hearing a voice in my head that led to the end of the events in Insurgence. Remember, I'd spent my life till then convinced I was on my own, the only hybrid entity in the universe, never mind Mars, and that it would always be so. Eglo gave me a future just by existing. It was her idea to push me into politics. I wouldn't have had the courage if not for her. She was there beside me for every milestone event. Mars really took to her and loved her. She was so much stronger, wittier, and more charismatic than dour old me. "It was you who did everything, though, Eleron," said Geraldine, through hot, buttery mouthfuls. Lovely. I'm glad she gave you the confidence to do your job, but it was you that did that job, not her." "Oh, no," I said, taken aback. "We're a team, better together. Her belief in me was everything, is everything. It's unshakable. I know she has never stopped believing in me, and I will never stop believing in her." Geraldine looked even more quizzical and put her hand to her pocket as if to pull something out of it. But just as she was about to say something, JJJJJ turned up and announced that our new enormous shuttle was now waiting for us.
"I've got some supplies for you on your journey,"
he said, pointing to row upon row of crates with lots of curious markings on the side. "We can't eat all those," Geraldine said.
"You might not be alone on the return journey,"
was all JJJJ said mysteriously. And the other thing I asked for? I was all too aware that the Futsal had burst into life again at this hour.
It's not quite ready yet, but we'll be all ready on your return, never fear,
said JJJJJ, tapping the side of both of his noses.
Once you've departed, I shall pass on your message, let our people know what's happening, and ask for their help, and contact your next destination to tell them you are on your way. I hope I gave you the right advice.
Oh, yes, I said, remembering what destination our shuttle shuffle button had come up with. They are a very speedy, efficient race. They're sure to be ready with the least amount of warning.
Good,
said JJJJJ.
And take these Wazula beans with you as a gift for whoever you should meet. They are a rare delicacy in the rest of the universe.
Thank you, we both said together as I took the package. You've been a good friend to us, JJJJ, I said, as Geraldine gave the squishy ambassador a hug and almost melted into him.
It is in our best interest your plan works, Eleron,
continued JJJJ.
May I wish you the traditional Dewsbury message of farewell. May you never go hungry for anything, and may your lives always be as full as your fridge.
With that he waved us off as we set off into space, our next destination of Galabdahardis having already been laid into the computer. Geraldine started looking at me and laughing. Our house was just like that pillow when I hugged him. Oh, last night was so funny, she giggled. I heard our neighbour actually put an official complaint in. She didn't, did she? I said. That's going to look bad on my public record when this is all over. If it's ever all over. We need to rely on so many strangers to make this happen. We looked at each other, more seriously this time. It will be, Eleron. The ones we've entrusted already have worked out pretty fine. If this was anyone else, I doubt their ability to unite the universe. But not you. Not after those speeches. Yes, I sighed. But maybe that's all they were. Speeches. After all, how on Mars do I encourage the next planet to join with us? Will anyone ever listen to me? After all, I haven't been president for very long. It seems a bit early into my term of office to be asking people for their help. Geraldine put her arm on my wing. Well, if you don't ask, we're as toast as this bread loaf, she said, in a succinct human way. Wait, what's all that noise? To our shock, we saw hundreds of Dewsbury giants coming out of their squishy round houses and walking towards us. At first I felt alarmed to see so many of these ginormous creatures lumbering towards me, making deep rumbling noises. My instincts told me to get away, and I sensed Geraldine physically turning to run too. But I remembered how sweet and pleasant all the Dewsburys I had ever met had been, and stopped her. The closer they came, the more I realised that these strangers were smiling at us and cheering. The rumbling sound had just been their tummies heard en masse. It was a most beautiful sound. Suddenly, for the first time since the invasion, I felt like we had a chance, and for the first time since becoming president, I didn't feel as if I was alone.
God, Eleron, you can do it, Eleron. We'll be there, Eleron. Just give us a word. Long live peace.
JJJJJ smiled at us. Your speech seems to have done a lot of good, Eleron. But had it done enough? Will we be met with this response on every planet we visited? Or have we just got lucky on this planet where I knew the natives to be friendly? After all, just looked at the packed lunch they had given us. Every sort of gluten imaginable. Even if the universe survives forever, we won't be able to eat all that, whispered Geraldine as bag after bag was loaded into our shuttle. Not another marshmallow. I think I'm going to be sick. First rule of diplomacy, I whispered. Try not to be sick if you can help it. Second rule of diplomacy, smile and say thank you. We'll worry about it later. Is there a third rule? Geraldine asked. Yes, but I'm going to be diplomatic about when to tell you what it is. Queen Calixta was sure that the IPO were hiding something about their intergalactic president and had been getting bored with scrolling through the Universal. She had studied a great deal of what it had to say about all these alien planets, and they all sounded dreadful. Such sunshine, such warmth, such optimism about the future. It made Queen Calixta feel quite ill. She came to the Earth last and was shocked to read about the range of variety contained within that planet in particular. Like many tyrants, Queen Calixta loathed differences and quirks. She'd liked her troops to be neat and uniform, identical in everything except their names, and even those merely recycled across 26 different letters of the 26 species she allowed to stay alive from colonised worlds in order to better identify them all, together with a favoured collection of vowels and consonants. She thought the range of human bodies seen on Earth was the worst possible thing she could have found, but no. Then she discovered the concept of hybrid creatures too. Queen Calixta felt ever more ill at the thought of such very different people mating and corrupting their DNA across the universe. For a purebred royal like Queen Calixta, differences were there to be taken out of the genetic chain and stamped out and colonised, not celebrated the way the universe, and particularly the IPO, seemed to think. So Queen Calixta decided that she would celebrate the Agrosian way of life and experience her own brand of fun by shouting and stamping a lot and trying to interrogate her prisoners en masse. Though this had been the preferred way of doing things on Agrosia, being together seemed to have given the prisoners some added resilience and strength from somewhere. Far better then to have them interrogated individually. One of them was bound to crack in the end and tell her everything about this mysterious Eleron, or better yet, where he was. One by one she spoke to them all, well, all except the Glabdahardits, who were so scared they were being sick from fright, and Queen Calixta knew from a militaristic upbringing that such weaklings would be of no use to her. She had hoped to tell what sort of a military leader this Eleron was, but none of these strange alien beings seemed to be able to agree. One moment Eleron sounded like an idiot, preaching this foreign concept called peace, and the creature seemed to have little but disdain for a leader who had abandoned them in their hour of need instead of rushing back to help. They all seemed to feel that it would only be a matter of time before the Agrosians caught him. At other times, Eleron sounded as if he was their biggest source of inspiration, someone who fought differently to the rest of them, and so who would save them by different and improbable means. He'd stayed away not out of cowardice, but out of cunning, and who was loyal and brave and imaginative. Ugh, 3 adjectives Queen Calixta particularly hated. Oddly, sometimes it was the same beings who admitted to seeing Eleron from both points of view under different interrogations. It was no big deal in the end, though. Eleron sounded like some of those conquered beings from Queen Calixta's side of the universe who tried to fight back every so often, committed and noble and righteous in life, but as dead and forgotten as all the others by the time he was buried in the ground. It was the Belobrat who finally given her what she wanted, her years of training honing in on his escalating fright, which was an entirely different sort to the quaking Glabdahardits. Queen Calixta had been wary of interrogating him at first, being the largest and most physically intimidating of the 9 types of creature before her, but some sixth sense that came after generations of royal breeding with the most vicious and tempestuous members of the Agrosian hive told her that he was weaker than he seemed. This Belobrat with the multiple heads all chatting away at once had started off so sure of himself, but had quickly begun to unravel, offering her deals over the heads of the others if she'd let him go free. Queen Calixta had never come across the concept of collaboration before, but she liked what she heard, as without even having to do much she was being promised all sorts of things that sounded too good to be true. Immediate surrender of 9 of the 10 planets, all the resources she wanted, billions of slaves of all shapes, sizes and colours, depending on what work she wanted doing, all in return for 1 life. Well, that sounded doable. The only problem was, even though this chatterbox thought he was the ruler, he wasn't, and that wasn't the way Agrosians did things. Even the smaller bird-like creatures referred to as a habitat everyone kept glancing at admitted several times that he wasn't actually the ruler, this Eleron was, and without it Calixta was honour bound to do nothing for the moment. One thing the Belobrat admitted, though, was that in an element of time Queen Calixta didn't quite understand, agreement on Agrosian measurements as a standard across the universe would be another condition of everyone's immediate surrender, Calixta noted to herself. The presidency would automatically revert to the Habridat. At one stage she had wondered if there even was an Eleron, and demanded the 3-headed one to show her proof of who was president in case they were trying some big trick on her. But no, there it was in print, on an official document on the screen they showed her, but without a picture, just a description and background, as official Mrasianart files had long argued that you shouldn't judge a creature by appearance, but by their word. Somehow that only made this Eleron being seem ever more mysterious. But where was he? This was a universe big enough to hide away in, but Queen Calixta knew something she would track him down somehow, come what may.
Early Cretan times.
The Decreetan Daily.
Intergalactic Decreeta server. Decreeta unavailable. Decreeta daily newspaper has been cancelled for today.